Hello and welcome to this preview video of the second part of Act 2 of Hamlet, which I title Friends, Actors, and a Soliloquy. This scene, this chunk of text, and one could argue the play itself, is of all of Shakespeare's plays the one that's most about acting itself. And that's particularly true of this section. As we know, Claudius has hired Hamlet's college friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, to spy on him, to figure out why he's behaving so strangely. We have Hamlet's words. After speaking with the ghost, Hamlet tells Horatio and Marcellus, from this time forth, I shall think it meet to put an antic disposition on. I will behave strangely. We don't get a real defense as to why, other than he thinks it meet, MEET. He thinks it appropriate. We don't have reasoning as to why. So because of that, we don't really know whether Hamlet is legitimately crazy or he's behaving that way as a sort of strange defense mechanism. So in a story where, people are spying on Laertes in Paris, you have Polonius spying on Hamlet really terribly. You have Polonius about to lose his daughter Ophelia unto Hamlet, and Polonius and Claudius will be watching that, so little mini plays being staged. Now Hamlet is really the attempted victim of a spying plan here from his two college buddies. And it starts around line 240. Again, I'm using the Folger edition of Hamlet. So when my students do their acting project, this is one of the really dynamic scenes that they often choose, because the arc of the scene is really, really interesting. And it begins with very difficult language. Shocker in Hamlet, right? But Hamlet, a very passionate intellectual college student, meets two other passionate intellectual college students. And when Hamlet says, line 243, and again, when we do these preview videos, I really recommend reading along, marking your book, grounding yourself in the text before maybe experiencing it fully. Around 243, we notice Hamlet saying, "Good lads, how do you both?" Standard question. And Rosencrantz, almost sounding like Hamlet, in response to "How are you doing?" Rosencrantz says, "Oh, as the indifferent children of the earth." And Guildenstern says, "Happy, and that we are not over happy. On fortune's cap, we are not the very button." So you don't have to, the first time experiencing this, you don't have to understand every allusion, every word, every sort of smart double entendre or pun. Clearly, these people are friends. Clearly, they have inside jokes. Clearly, they're educated. Clearly, they're enjoying their own intellects and enjoying their own company. And this dialogue goes on all the way to line 286. Then Hamlet asks the simple question, "What are you doing here?" He asks, "What make you at Elsinore in Denmark?" And after some deflection, these Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, these people who really aren't really good actors, say, uh, they're kind of waffling, and Hamlet reads them. As someone who I feel loves the theater, as we'll see in a second, Hamlet reads the difference between authentic behavior and acting. And Hamlet says to his friends, "You were sent for," and there's a kind of confession in your looks that your modesties have not craft enough to color. I know the good king and queen have sent for you. The first really moment we meet Hamlet in Act 1, Scene 2, his mother criticizes him for wearing black and mourning the loss of his father and sort of acting sad. And she basically says, "Everybody goes through this. Why seems this so particular with thee?" And he says, "Seems. I know not seems." And he says later, "These are the actions that man might play." So even when talking about feeling loss of his father, he uses acting terms. And here he says to his buddies, "Neither of you guys are smart enough to hide your acting," right? I know you were sent for. Which then um, which then leads to one of the more famous speeches in the play. Line 326, Act 2, Scene 2. It opens up and enlarges Hamlet's mind for whatever reason, right? Think of everything he's lost: his father, his mother's loyalty. These are two of his good friends. He's lost them. He's lost his girlfriend. They say, Guildenstern says in 325, "My lord, we were sent for." And here's Hamlet's response: "I will tell you why. So shall my anticipation prevent your discovery, and your secrecy to the king and queen moult no feather." And here's the key point, and mark this in your book. Hamlet says, "I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth." Wherefore, remember, means why. Wherefore art thou Romeo means why are you Romeo? Doesn't mean where. Hamlet says, lately I've lost all my happiness and I don't know why. So I wrote in my book, is Hamlet a mystery to Hamlet? Or is he acting with his friends? That's a discussion we can have. I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, forgone all custom of exercises, and indeed it goes so heavily with my disposition that, and then look, he's in his head, and then he's in a particular court in Denmark, and then suddenly we're talking about the entire world. This is how Hamlet's mind, he has an extremely expansive mind. He says, indeed, it goes so heavily with my disposition that this goodly frame, the earth, seems to me a sterile promontory. This most excellent canopy, the air, look you, this brave o'erhanging firmament, this majestical roof fretted with golden fire, why, it appeareth nothing to me but a foul and pestilent congregation of vapors. And then he moves away from his own perception of the sort of foulness of the world to then suddenly shifting to the nobility of mankind itself. What a piece of work is a man! How noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable, in action, how like an angel, in apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. And yet, to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me. The first soliloquy Hamlet gives, he wishes, he says, oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and dissolve itself into a dew. It seems like in Hamlet's darkest moments, he descends into the earth. And here we have a really interesting mixture of Hamlet noticing the nobility of man and how extraordinary mankind is, the quintessential Renaissance comment, right? But then at the same time looking at himself and realizing he wishes he was dust. But he doesn't say that actually mankind is a quintessence of dust. Mankind in itself is dust. So this is just like a wonderfully dynamic moment, which goes from like a bro fest between college guys to getting caught spying to this really interesting philosophical exploration. It might be worth just in a class or a reading group sitting with these lines and not only discerning like what things literally mean, but what kind of people move from a welcome and a bro fest to a paranoia to philosophical introspection. Like this is just, who does this would be my question. What kind of person? Then it turns out that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are telling Hamlet that there's a group of traveling players, traveling actors coming to the court, and Hamlet never seems happier. On their way, Hamlet bumps into Polonius again, and this is a throwaway moment, but I want to point it out because there are two allusions, references to other texts that I think are really interesting. And Hamlet with Polonius refers to Jephthah, which is from the 11th chapter of Judges, and Jephthah is a judge, and in exchange for defeating the Ammonites, he makes a vow to sacrifice whoever would come out of his door first of his house, and then his daughter comes out first, which means he's required to sacrifice his daughter to God. He had made the promise to God. He then kills his daughter. So interestingly, when talking to Polonius, his ex-girlfriend's father, he makes reference to an Old Testament story about a father destroying a daughter. Something to maybe talk about. And then the actors show up, and Hamlet is so excited. He starts reciting a speech he remembers them giving years ago, and then asks for a continuance of the speech. And the speech is a spin-off of Homer's Iliad, where Pyrrhus, here, Achilles' son, avenges his father's murder by killing King Priam, the king of the Trojans. So we have a story about a father destroying his daughter, and we have a classic mythological story about father and son vengeance. I just don't think we want to presume anything's accidental. And sometimes, after we read, if you're looking to write a paper or do a deep dive, it's always interesting to see in books where other books live and how they're used. Again, with a lot of Hamlet, the first time experiencing it, a lot's going to go over your head, no matter how old you are and how much you've read. And I didn't mean to rhyme just then. With any performance, and I show the Brana one to my students, watch Hamlet around the actors. I don't think you'll ever see him this happy. Even if you watch it on mute, his posture, his blocking, his movements suggest a real sense of comfort with theater people. So Polonius has no use for the imagination, even though later he says he acted in Julius Caesar, which is funny. But Hamlet says of the actors, he wants them to be, well taken care of in the kingdom, and he says, "Let them be well used, for they are the abstract and brief chronicles of the time. After your death, you were better have a bad epitaph than their ill report while you live." My students start the year with Beowulf, and the Shope, the Anglo-Saxon poet of a tribe, would be responsible for your immortality. If he sang your song after you died, you in a way live forever. That's sort of what Hamlet is saying actors are. That actors can determine your reputation both while you live and afterwards. The player king gives this incredible speech about Pyrrhus's murder of King Priam, and you have Hecuba weeping, and so the last moment of Act 2 is Hamlet's second great soliloquy. The "Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I" soliloquy. And what bothers Hamlet here, and I'm not going to walk through and analyze it because there's lots to talk about and you should experience it and think about it for yourself. But the occasion for the soliloquy is he separates himself from the theater folks because he's so bothered by the fact that the player king can cry, can conjure real tears over, Pyrrhus' slaughter of Priam, over Hecuba weeping, over fictitious characters. And he has lost a real father and can't stir himself to action. And that just really bothers him. He comes at the end, he makes a critical decision. And what we get at the end is he makes a promise to stage his own play. And of all of Shakespeare's gifts to the theater, one of the great ones is the idea of a play within a play. Characters staging little moments and then separating themselves to watch the moments play out. He says, this is the last page of the script, line 1 of Act 2, Scene 2, line 623. Here's his plan. Hamlet says, "I'll have these players, these actors that have showed up, play something like the murder of my father before mine uncle. I'm going to sit back and watch. And I'm going to stage something that looks like my dad getting killed in a garden with poison, by my uncle. I'll observe his looks. I'll tend him to the quick. If he do but blench, I know my course." So right now, the audience must think, why is Hamlet second-guessing the ghost? The ghost already said what happened. Why are we doing this? Hamlet says, 627, the spirit that I have seen may be a devil, and the devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape. Yea, and perhaps out of my weakness and my melancholy, as he is very potent with such spirits, abuses me to damn me. Hamlet has taken that medieval notion that the devil comes in sort of ghostly disguise. So this is he's using theater to decide the truthfulness, in a way, of the ghost. He says olive ground's more relative than this, relative being a play on words. And then these last lines that are really famous here. The play is the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. All right. So much of this chunk of Act 2, Scene 2, of Act 2 here is about theater. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's completely ineffective theater. Hamlet's love of the theater. Hamlet sort of gushing with literary allusions, and then Hamlet wildly frustrated with his own inadequacy in avenging his father's loss, using theater coming up to clarify whether his father was actually murdered by his uncle. So I hope this preview video helps ground you in this section of Act 2, and good luck with your reading.